Newzroom Africa's Nqobile Madlala was in Virginia today. She joins us live in studio. Nqobile, a big issue for the Department of Minerals. On the one hand, we've had this problem of illegal mining taking place. It continues to be exacerbated. The syndicates, of course, have taken over some of these mines, and no clear answers from the Department of Minerals and Energy around how they're going to uproot this criminality.
Well, in fact, they were even pointing at this point at Lesotho National, saying that it's a government issue that requires two governments to come together and work together. But you can clearly see that it's at a point where they don't really know how they're going to do it, but they do need some assistance. Because what the minister was pointing out is that the government in Lesotho, when somebody comes to you and says there are people that are stuck right now, that there has been an explosion and you know that they're doing something illegal, so why is it that they're comfortable to come to you? So there needs to be a collaborative effort in both the governments to look into this issue, because they're saying it's a growing number. That's clearly, they're seeing that there's an increase. I mean, you and I have seen how many cases of people that have passed on because of this illegal mining. We have seen how communities have been terrorized over time, and this continues as well in this community where there are illegal mining. But if you speak to people also on the ground, they're saying this is a way to make money.
Is Minister Gwede Mantashe saying that the fact that they're Lesotho nationals is something new for them as government? Because if we're being fully honest, we know that the allegations around where some of these funds from these illegal miners are ending up is to fund political parties in countries like Lesotho. That has been evidence in the run-up to Lesotho's election in the previous cycle. So it's something that government is well aware of.
Well, they're definitely well aware of it. I mean, we have seen, videos. There were videos on TikTok just not so long ago of that money that was being distributed in Lesotho. And of course, these are videos that were being saying that it's happening in Lesotho. Now, whilst we don't confirm it that it was happening, but it is definitely an allegation, and a strong one, that it is currently happening. But when you speak to the minister, you can already hear that he does want Lesotho to come on board. But what was interesting, Kathy, is that when he spoke to the government in Lesotho, at some point they said to him, why don't you take other illegal miners and send them down to go get other illegal miners from the bottom. And that in itself was a concern, and he was saying that the government in South Africa will not allow such to happen. But that in itself is concerning, because that means it's an open secret for both governments that this is happening, but nobody's coming up with the answers in terms of how to curb it.
Absolutely. And of course, from what we understand around some of these miners is that they know those mines better than even some of the companies that have previously been mining. Where's Harmony Gold in all of this? Were they present today?
Yes, they were present. In fact, when they spoke to us, they said that they are working with the police. They've given as much information as they can. When the minister was telling us, he said, most of these mines have been sealed, but most of them are also exploded open so that people could go inside. So they're saying the major issue at this point is that there's a pipeline and those passages that were sealed. Now they can't use those to get to the where the incident occurred. What is even worse is that they're saying that they're still noticing a methane gas, and those movements shows that there's still activity that's taking place inside, which is why they feel at this point that you're most likely going to see more bodies than the 31 people that we have already heard about, and of course the 3 people that have been taken out.
The minister not shying away from reports yesterday, and this is really around the allegations that were on the front page of the Sunday Times, I believe, which is him basically missing out on a meeting that was held between the President, the Dutch and the French governments to sign memorandums of understanding around renewable energy, and him being a no-show and basically saying, well, he didn't show up because he wasn't given the memo and he doesn't sign documents he hasn't read.
Well, that's what he said. He said he needed to read that document. He said he didn't want to find himself in trouble in future when he doesn't know what was written in that document. But he says it's not because he doesn't believe in it. It's got nothing to do with his views. It's just got everything to do with what he had at the time.
Open defiance is one of the questions that was put to him. What did he have to say?
Well, I think the minister has a lot to say, Kathy, with regards to everything, to be quite honest. I mean, if you look at him, he was just saying that at this point, he feels like they're even telling him that he's defending Harmony Gold, but he's saying that's not it. They're just trying to find answers. And it seems like he's searching for answers in everywhere at this point.
All right, Mobile, I'm going to ask you to hold it on that thought. Let's bring into this conversation Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Mineral Resources. The chairperson is Sahlulele Luzipo. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you for your time tonight. Firstly, you, of course, have been trying to push for stronger action when it comes to how the South African state responds to the illegal mining that is taking place. By and large, many of these mining companies have said on record that they are overwhelmed. Their security personnel are also under threat from these individuals that are heavily armed with the kind of artillery that, quite frankly, we won't even find in our police services.
Well, good evening to you, Kathy, and the viewership and your guest in studio. Yes, like you said, that this is, for me, I always say the issue of illegal mining is a very complex matter. It requires a lot of unpacking to do. Some of the issues are matters that will require just an intervention to address what one would call the low-hanging fruits. For an example, ensuring that communities are given access to participate in the mining activities. But there are those that one would say they are a risky challenge, both in terms of society, but also in terms of national security. One example, for instance, is that if you look at areas like your West Rand in Gauteng, and the fact that even your roads, in terms of balance, are not guaranteed because illegal mining activities are taking place underground. You then have illegal activities that would, and then be a health risk, like the one that allegedly you are being told about that took place in the Free State because of the high methane gas that was coming through. So you'll get different aspects of illegal mining that are taking place. So there are those that would say they require just a smooth intervention on the part of the state. For instance, addressing the issue of your what we call small-scale mining. That is something else. But I think this one, we're dealing with a very complex issue that does not only require South Africa to find a solution on. If you look exactly on the issue of the ammunition that you're talking about, we get reports that some of the ammunition that you get is the military ammunition, including the bombs that are used underground to crack. So those are some of the issues that we will require us to go beyond just what is at face value.
But Mr. Luzipo, you know, some of the information that we're talking about has been in the public domain for some time now. In fact, it's also been with a committee like yours for some time. What have you done to try and get accountability, particularly from the ministers that are affected here? Because without a commitment to rooting out the problem, whether from a policy perspective, whether from a political imperative perspective, this situation is not going to change. And one gets the sense that there is an avoidance of the issue due to the political hot potato that it presents for South Africa, especially when it comes to relations with our partners on the region.
Look, I think, Kathy, let's be fair. You know, the problem here is that you can't enforce your South African law to other countries. We're just undertaking a 3-committee exercise that was looking at the spate of illegal mining. And this is why we've said maybe the starting point is that what lessons do we learn and to what extent we can be able to attend to those issues. For instance, government has made that commitment and they've started the process of addressing the issue of small-scale mining. That small-scale mining actually means it's something that is managed within the state. Now let's take the issue that is at hand now. The reports that there are 31 bodies that are underground, whether it's 31 or 28 now, I think it's just not a major issue. The issue that we've made as a recommendation was that there is a need to look at this issue beyond the South African borders as a subject matter. The question would be, can we make the Minister of Mineral Resources or the Minister of International Relations or whoever to represent a country that may not necessarily feel that there is something that is urgent? All what I could say is that with this incident, we think our neighbors, specifically in our neighboring countries, Lesotho. Remember, at some point when the issue was raised about it, who are the actual foot soldiers, not the actual kingpins behind, who are the actual foot soldiers? We said one of the things that is a sad thing is that these are young minors who are below the ages of 18 because of their size, so that they can be able to smoothly go underground. And therefore it means we've got an element of what we call not just human trafficking, but child trafficking in order to be used as slaves in the mine. And therefore it means you have to cut where it takes place, which is why we said, let's take
Mr.
our
Luzipo,
Mr.
Luzipo,
to understand.
I think the issue here is not about South Africa imposing its laws on other countries. It's about what happens once somebody is on South African territory. There is a responsibility there, and we can't absolve government of that responsibility just because these nationals are said to not be South African. Because the other question it poses is then, well, how did they make their way into the country? Do they have the documents to be here? How is government responding to that aspect of the conversation? So I hear you when you say that to some extent, the challenge that is being faced is also not in your hands. But if we're being honest, President Cyril Ramaphosa was one of the mediators to the conflict in Lesotho at a time that they were having challenges. We already have relations with these countries. So it's not like you're starting the relationship from scratch, which is why I say that there seems to be, a trepidation or, to try and really deal with this matter head on.
I can't speak for an example, I can't speak for the issue of the movement of people. Remember, that is why we had it grouped in the Committee on Home Affairs. But the question then arises, what are the arrangements? Let's just look now. There was a lot of noise, sorry if it's a strong word that was used, when South Africa had to review the issue of people from Zimbabwe in this country to say, that period that was in, before that, a year before, there was an issue about what becomes the status of people from Lesotho and how do you strengthen the issue of border control.